Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and welcome to the Development Hell podcast. And this is the Movie Club. And we have Vinnie, we have Joe, we have Kevin, and we have Matt here to talk about Akira Kurosawa's 1950 drama Rashomon. And like you said, it's from Akira Kurosawa, who co-wrote this film along with Shinobu Hashimoto, based off of Ryunosuke Kutagawa's Rashomon and In the Grove, starring Toshiro Mifune, Machiko Kuyo, Masuyuki Mori, and Takashi Shimura. So you're welcome, everybody. I watch a lot of Akira Kurosawa films, and Mifune and Shimura are some of the two big reoccurring actors there. But like how we always start off the show, we're going to get everybody's brief perspective on what they thought about the film, and then we are going to dive into which one of these groups were taken to Applebee's and who do we believe. I'm really wondering how many of you believe the ghost person. But Vinny, what are your general thoughts on Rashomon?
I liked it a lot. This was actually my first time watching it, and it was my second Kurosawa movie after Throne of Blood that we reviewed. Well, not reviewed, but we discussed last year.
Mm-hmm.
So like I was actually, you know what, I was getting ready to when I was watching the movie like near the beginning, I was getting invested. I was getting ready to be like really invested in like the because like there are two stories going on. There's the one with the three people telling the story, and then the three people involved with the story. But like, but the story of what happens in the woods, I was getting ready to be mostly invested with that, and I was invested in it. But I was actually surprised that I was actually more, and like this isn't any fault to the story. I'm just saying I was actually more invested in the three characters telling the story because because of like how you really get to see their views of the world and like their view of mankind. You know, like the you know the priest, the priest, he like no matter what, he wants to believe in humanity, while the other guy, the like I guess he calls himself a bandit. How like he has that line where like he says, only dogs can survive in this world. If you can't, like if you're not selfish, you can't survive. And like I really liked that, like that whole dynamic between the two of them, with one being a believer in humanity, and the other one believing in the worst of humanity. And I I just really loved that part of the story. And I'll talk more about later, but I thought it was a great movie.
So, Joe.
Hearing Vinny talk about it, because we saw it yesterday, and this was my first time watching the movie. Um, I really came into this blind. I had no idea, and then it was discovered that this is like one of those first movie that takes that trope of multiple people having different perspectives, which is interesting because it kind of reminds me of Ikairu at the end of Ikairu. Again, I won't go into spoilers with that movie, but it kind of takes a similar approach on people talking about a person, which to me, to go off of what Vinny's saying, is fascinating. To me, is the fascinating story aspect. I do find that, to me, that's the part that does stick to me more, is when they're actually talking versus kind of like, I guess you would say it's sort of like a trial that they're kind of discussing and getting these multiple perspectives from. Um, I would say another thing that I found really, and this really speaks to Akira Kurosawa as a visual filmmaker, is that this movie has some very wonderful cinematography, considering that this was made in 1950. A lot of these shots just look beautiful. They're well framed. And I was saying multiple times while watching this movie, it was also very late, so I was kind of tired. So it had nothing to do with the movies. But that was one of the moments where I was like fully against. So I was like, God damn, this man knows how to frame a really good shot. Every frame looked like it has a purpose. And, you know, probably talk about it a little bit more. But even the way rain is used in the movie when talking about the two characters, the priest and the other guy talking together is used cinematically, almost, it just felt relaxing, like hearing it amongst the rain. I'm not sure if that was the intention it was going for, but it's definitely kind of just, I don't know, it worked. I mean, yeah, Rashomon.
How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I really enjoyed this too. This was also my second Kurosawa movie I've seen. The first one was Yojimbo. I was not aware of what this movie was about going in. I was pleasantly surprised to see it was somewhat of like a sort of courtroom drama, so to
Mhm.
speak. It was, a crime movie. I really enjoyed the way they made you doubt everyone's story. Uh, I had trouble deciding on who I actually believed the most by the end of the movie. If I had to pick, I'd say it's probably the woodcutter, but I still have my doubts about his version of events as well. But I really liked everybody's characterization in the movie, especially I think my favorite character was the wife. Um, at first, I was really, believing her story as well, but there's also, it takes place in, I guess, feudal Japan. There's a really strong element of shame in this movie, and you feel it with her character the most. I get sort of the impression the reason I didn't fully trust her is because I felt like maybe she was trying to protect her honor or something to some degree. Well, and I got that from most of the characters, but I guess I don't know. I just really like the way they explored that and made me have doubts about certain characters. That there's a this person has this huge personality trait that would make me believe part of their story and not the others, and the way that all intertwined, I thought was wonderful.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, definitely a lot of huge personalities. Like the acting in this movie, they really, really go for it. And like it's like so many different like aspects of that. Like the face acting, where like the one his name Mufune, like
Yep.
when he when he when he laughs or
Mhm.
he kind of like glares at someone or he's doing like the like that stuff. That was great.
And I hope
Also,
all of you are paying attention to the video of this episode so you can see Matt's expressions.
yeah. Also the yeah, every single time he did that, that was wild. And then you go on his Wikipedia page and you see like him, just a regular him, clean cut, just like regular him. He looks so different. Also, the face acting on when in the wife's story, when she, I guess, I don't know, like when I was reading the Wikipedia page, like it said it used the word seduce, but I don't know, like that. I feel like there was like she was like attacked. But either way, like when she walked back to her husband and she was saying how like, oh, he didn't say anything, he had his look in his eye, like it was like a really funny look. I wish I could make it into like a meme. It was like, I don't even know, it was like he gave her a look or it was like almost like half smiling. It's like, oh, you seriously gonna cry now, like really, like now you're gonna come back to me, like I cut my ropes for real, or is what you're doing right now. I don't know, there's like so much like fun interesting things. Also, again, like with the acting is and like it's like over the top. I've seen a lot of sword fights in a lot of different movies. Like when you watch Star Wars, it looks like dancing. When you watch Crouching Tiger, it looks like supernatural almost.
Hmm.
And this movie, it was so like every aspect of this movie was so gritty. Like people, like it wasn't elegant. Like no part of this movie is like everyone's face is like covered in sweat and grime, and you see the one guy keeps like slapping like mosquitoes, and like everyone's like covered in dirt, and the like all the sword fighting is it's like sloppy, but also like realistic, but also makes sense that it's sloppy because like these perspectives of kind of like, oh yeah, like I crossed swords with him like 23 times and no one has ever done that before. He kind of like patting himself on the back, and then from someone else's perspective, like no, you're dog crap at fighting. Like what are you talking about? Like you only won that out of like technicality. Like it was like so it's so interesting. Every aspect of the movie, it's like damn, this is like really I really like this movie. I need to buy the DVD. I don't know. So yeah, so definitely a lot of cool acting.
Birthday
And
gift for
so
Matt.
one, yeah, like 2 thumbs up. Oh, and one last thing I'll say is that, for anyone that has a PlayStation 4 and who hasn't gotten the game Ghost of Tsushima,
Yes.
okay, A, highly recommend it, and then B, specifically the reason why I bring that up is not only because it's a movie, I mean, it's like a video game about a samurai, super awesome story, but also there's a mode that I think you can like put it on at any time, but especially like in the beginning, called a Kurosawa mode, where basically like, your whole screen has it goes black and white, and it has like a certain amount of kind of like film grain almost, and you can kind of play the story out as if it is a Kurosawa movie.
Is it 4:3 aspect ratio too?
That I forget.
No, it's not.
What's going on with my TV?
So we watched this yesterday, and I have, let's see.
Is it 4:3?
I have the old
Yeah.
You can make the
Janus
PS4
Films.
do that though.
So I have like this old Janus Films Essential Art House Cinema Collection version of this. So it was like blocked.
Oh,
As we
okay.
were watching it. So I wonder what the like Criterion Collection version of this looks like. And Matt might find out soon in the future in like 2 months when it's his birthday.
Question mark?
Because
Hey, that give us a reason to rewatch it. I know I'm down to.
well, for the record, I literally buy Matt Criterions for like every single birthday and Christmas gift. So I'm just
That's very It's gonna go on the
slowly
internet,
expanding.
my reaction.
I would be actually kind of curious too, because like 4:3 is making a comeback when it comes to preserving quality and just keeping it within frame. That I actually, when watching it with you, I thought it was Blu-ray, like how crystal clear it
No,
was.
like this was a DVD.
That's
And
good.
This is a 2008 print.
Wow.
I'll be right back.
From and like technically this is Criterion Collection, but like this is old Criterion Collection. So I would they're gonna make me spend so much money if they re-release all of these Kurosawa films in 4K on Criterion Collection.
It's like they have like a little alert, be like, Shane's gonna know. It's like this is the Shane alert.
I'm just like
payday.
Matt, was this your first time watching this?
Yeah, this is my first time ever watching it.
Which is interesting. So this is my 4th time watching this. So I'm the only one, I guess, who rewatched this. This is such a fascinating film. And this was a discussion that, because it was Joe, Kevin, and I were actually watching this together. And there's so many things that you pick up on watching Kurosawa's films that heavily influenced others. And very obviously, like George Lucas was heavily influenced for Star Wars by Kurosawa. The plot for the original Star Wars is kind of an adaptation of Hidden Fortress, which is a Kurosawa film. And we were discussing this, and then Joe pointed out, I was like, oh, look, they had a wipe. And I'm like, yeah. Where do you think George Lucas got it from? And it was
Not to mention, Mifune was almost cast as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yes, crazy. So obviously Lucas has big influence, and this little film that many people did not see, which they really should have back in 2021, which is really sad that they didn't, was The Last Duel.
I just watched that like the other week. For the first time.
What movie do you think Matt Damon and Ben Affleck watched? Rashomon, because they wrote the script with
Nicole Holofcener.
Yep, and it's very obviously influenced by a storytelling structure that Rashomon utilizes, because this is like Wes Anderson would be jealous of the uses of framed narratives in this movie, seeing as Grand Budapest Hotel has 4 framed narratives.
Yeah.
Narrative within a narrative within a narrative within a narrative. This is such an incredible framed narrative within a framed narrative, and then the framed narrative within the framed narrative changes 4 times. Because you have the woodcutter, the priest, and the commoner talking about a trial, which within the trial have people telling stories about what happens. So it's right off the bat, this is incredibly complex storytelling for a film that came out in 1950.
Yeah.
Like, it's complex for today. Like, I don't know how many screenwriters out there that could really make this work. And like Vinny, what you pointed out, make the framed narrative outside just as compelling as the stories that are being told. Because the dynamic between the woodcutter, the priest, and the commoner says so much about humanity. And even when the whole story's done, there's still stuff afterwards that's compelling and has a lot to say about people. And I think that's what Kurosawa accomplishes so well in this film is how well he knows people. Because you see what the woodcutter winds up doing, which potentially poisons his own story, is that he didn't really stay objective, did he? He took something for his own purpose, and it's just like, oh, that's not great. That doesn't look great for you. And then also, he was too afraid to tell his story to the actual like trial. And then you have this priest who's so stringently trying to be like, I want to do what's best for humanity. And then you have that commoner guy who's just like, screw all y'all. This world is dog eat dog, and we're going to do what we need to do. And it's so fascinating how each story captures aspects of each of the characters. Because Mifune's character, who tells his story first, Tajumoru, is so full of himself that it feels like he manufactures a version of the story that makes him seem like he's better. And he even elevated the samurai who he was fighting, because he's like Matt pointed out, it's like, he was so great. We struck swords 23 times. Nobody's ever done that. And I counted it because it was so great. No, you didn't. Or at least potentially you didn't. But it's all about his ego. The wife, about her shame. And the husband, the samurai, about his honor. And which that whole sequence where it's like literally hearing his story through a medium, that was some crazy stuff. And then you have the woodcutter, whose story, at least, and I think we'll segue into this conversation, that I feel like his is the most believable, because nobody is painted out to being completely like good or clean in this situation. It's so and his story is the most compelling, because you do have a really well choreographed, awesome samurai fight scene in Tajumoru's story. But in this one, boy, is that a hot mess. And them slipping and falling and getting swords caught in stumps. It reminded me of Unforgiven, what we were talking about, of like destroying the mythology of the story, because that is a tall tale that Tajumoru probably would have told a bunch of people. I had this most epic fight. No, you didn't. And then the husband is an asshole. He's just like, you're a whore now. I don't want anything to do with you anymore. And it's just like, she literally did nothing. And you're just going to kick her to the curb because of your own warped perspective on things. And then the wife straight up gets in both of their faces and calls them out on it, and basically emasculating them in front of each other. And then they have a horrible fight with each other that ends very poorly. It's such a fascinating thing, but I believe the woodcutter, even though he does steal evidence, basically, because it's like, he's a desperate person. But I believe the woodcutter. Vinny, who do you believe? Most. Let's not make it as black and white, because there potentially could be some gray here.
You know what, I was leaning towards the woodcutter, but you know what, I don't I can't really say anything right now because you know what? I made the mistake of watching this movie like a couple like a couple weeks ago. So I kind of like forgot a lot of like the finer details like concerning all of their stories. Like I should have watched this like maybe like last night or a couple nights ago, but like I made the mistake of watching it 2 weeks ago. So I'm kind of like I kind of like forgot like the little details about it. So forgive me on that for not being able to answer.
Vinny abstains. Joe.
I mean, I'm kind of going off of what everybody else is saying. You kind of look at like real life trials, you look at like a lot of what is objectivity, even just the idea of like truth is subjective, everybody's truth and personal truths are really what they are. And whether or not how much of they are true to me is besides the point. I feel like that's kind of what makes this movie great is that, you can really go in and we can have these conversations over who is the most reliable, who has the most to gain, who has the most to lose, whose version of the story supports themselves versus supporting someone else. And you know, quite frankly, talking about the first guy who made the crazy dude who made it seem like his version of the story was, you know, painting himself as the hero
A really
is
cool
so
Shamrock
twisted.
movie. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so twisted because it's like it reminds me of how a lot of guilty people in real life go on trial. Like this one dude murders his whole family. I forgot the name of him. Like I was watching it on Court TV a couple months ago. Murders his whole family, and to the end of the trial insists that he was the one that was the bad guy. You know? Like this is stuff that happens in real life all the time. So like, especially even seeing the scene where he's talking about how like he seduced her felt just so morally wrong and disgusting. But
Mhm.
that's when you're looking at some folks that see the world in those lens. It really paints a morbid picture of reality. So to give you an answer, Shane, I don't believe any of them.
Seduced her and then proposed to her? Question mark. That was pretty bad. Also not smooth.
No.
Yeah.
So let me stop there. Does anybody feel like they believe any of them enough to believe them
No.
that this is what happened, or at least close to what
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, so my perspective personally, again, like you're all saying, I don't 100% believe anybody's story uh, in its entirety. Uh, but if I were like a juror on this trial, I think I believe the details that the woodcutter gave about the actual killing itself the
Yeah.
most. And actually, part of my reason for that, to go back to what Matt was saying before, was the way they showed the fight that ensued in that version of the story. In particular, everybody had some account of the two of them fighting.
Mhm.
Uh, I liked the way they showed it in that sequence the most, and it seemed like it was just the most believable.
Mm.
Just I don't know, something about the way it was choreographed, the way it was filmed. It seemed pretty realistic, and I just enjoyed it. That was the most believable sequence of events, in my opinion. Even if not everyone had the right reasons for spinning their tail the way they did.
How about you, Matt?
Yeah, no, so I wanted to immediately say like woodcutter, but I really like what Joe said about the fact that maybe the point of the movie isn't necessarily to show kind of like, okay, so these are a group of bad people, but which one is the worst? And
Mm.
then like, okay, and the worst is the one that needs like judgment, because the movie doesn't end on kind of like some kind of like verdict being kind of like thrown down or something like that.
Mhm.
So and and I feel like that's like an intentional thing. So then to go back to what Joe said, I feel like this is more like a meditation on like human nature,
Yeah.
and kind of like there's a lot of gray and a lot of self-interest and a lot of like moral code or kind of that's like either like true or it's BS or
Yeah.
it's like kind of moral, kind of so like to reference the like the you've had two men, so now you kill yourself kind of stuff. So it's like a moral code. Like, is that though? It's not actually. Spoiler. Is that's crappy. But I think that yeah. So I really actually Joe, I really like what you
Thank you.
said. But then so like the woodcutter. So then, but if I had like gun to my head or sword to my head, I think the woodcutter it makes the most sense. Also, it definitely can't be the what is it? It definitely can't be the I guess like the husband's perspective through the medium because in every retelling he died in a bush. And it's like super random. Like
Yeah.
he died in a bush, but in the husband's retelling, he died kind of like in like this clearing, and then takes the dagger and he stabs himself. But he's in, but it's like completely. It's so different how he dies compared to like everyone else. So I know like at least I want to believe that that's like complete like nonsense.
I
Though I
think
will say that voice that they do that they give the medium,
yeah.
like I was like it was on my couch. I looked down at my phone and then she started talking. I was like, oh, what, is this The Exorcist or is this like still?
Well, that's what I love about Kurosawa. Even in like, was it Throne of Blood, where you see the
Mm.
witches? Like he does throw in a supernatural aspect into his movies, and it catches you off guard because it's like in Game of Thrones, where it's like, hints and flavors, or even Dune, where it's hints and flavors of a
Mm.
sci-fi aspect, but for the most part, it's grounded. It'd be like, oh shit, that's happening. Dragons or sandworms, like what?
There's ice zombies in my Kurosawa film.
He may as well. I mean, if he was still alive today, I think he could do a great episode of Game of Thrones
Oh, they would try to get him to do all of Game of Thrones.
easily.
Like, oh,
Yeah, right. Imagine that. That could be our next fan
oh.
casting episode. What if Kurosawa
I
directed
had
Game
the
of Thrones?
same thought, Joe. What if Akira Kurosawa's Game of Thrones?
Ooh.
Oh,
Ooh.
The last
oh.
season would be a lot different. And when I say different, I mean satisfying and better. And
Because because there really, like in real life, there are no endings. There's no perfect happy endings. He would have
Oh,
did something
yeah,
more
Joe, we're
reality.
gonna have to message about that. And yeah, just a shameless plug that Joe and I are going to be having an episode of my talk show coming out. What if live action Atlantis: The Lost Empire? So now we're going to have to do what if Akira Kurosawa's Game of Thrones.
Oh, I
That's
love it.
definitely that. Yep, we got to do that one. Well,
I'll have to
there we
watch a little bit more though. I have to watch more Kurosawa before we do that.
go. We'll talk details. But now, are we taking anybody to Applebee's out
Um,
of
he-
all these characters?
Here's
definitely
my
the priest.
scenario.
Definitely the priest. Like 100% the priest. Also, I feel like the priest should have held on to the kid. The guy at the end, he was like, "I have 6 kids." There's like what's one more? It's like, wait, no, that's
You
like a
have
lot of
6
kids.
starving kids. You saying you want a 7th starving kid is not a good justification to
Who's
take
like,
a
come on, let's
child.
bring one
But
more.
but who's to say that once he has the 7 kids, they won't grow up to become the 7 samurai?
Oh,
He
ooh.
Crazy origin story. Vinnie says it first.
Here's my problem though with bringing them to Applebee's, or bringing anybody to Applebee's. You dog is bringing any of them to Applebee's is the fact it would be so friggin' depressing and morbid.
Also, you
Like
to
if
check
I'm
your
going to
swords at the
Applebee's, I want it to be
door.
fun and be like,
If we bring Tajimuru, he's going to be telling all kinds of stories.
he's gonna be
gonna
doing belly shots. He's
cackling.
gonna get into a fight with somebody. Like it's
You
gonna
know
be
he doesn't
it's gonna be
tip. You know
entertaining.
he doesn't tip. I promise you, he does not tip. I
And
promise
he'll
you.
fight someone and he'll pull out a samurai sword. He'll get the click from the samurai sword. It would be pretty dope. I actually, you know what? Let's have him for dinner.
He totally would steal tips off tables if anybody left cash tips.
And
Here's the
gaslight
tip.
everybody,
Connor-
say that that's supposed to go to him anyways.
And then laugh in the parking lot. I hate that. I hate that.
If we really
love it.
wanted to get freaky at Applebee's, we're bringing the medium.
Oh my!
Oh,
Please
man.
bring back Chris Farley.
I wonder what the notes were when Kurosawa was talking to the actress. So he was like, "Okay, so this is how I want the scene to go. This is what like your motivation is. This is," and she's like, "Are you sure you want me to like?" And then she probably did a take, and then he was like, "No, louder. Like, try again."
We need louder. But there, from like a kind of shifting gears to like a technical aspect, there's so many great shots in this film. I know
Yeah.
Joe had a audible reaction to the woodcutter finding like the hands sticking out in frame and him framed in it at the beginning of the film. That was so great. Like it's such a perfect shot to set
Yeah.
up the rest of this film.
Like even the way that whole scene was shot. You guys have to remember, this was the 50s. We didn't have drones. We had giant bulky cameras with like, you know, train tracks so
Yeah,
for the dollies
basically.
and the pans. And this is in the woods with a ton of woods. And I'm going to go out of a limb and say that I think this wasn't natural. I think this is a set because of the way the lighting is. But you wouldn't have guessed that because it felt so natural and so real. To me, I love watching movies where you're watching it and you just go, this is art in motion. That whole scene was art in motion. And
This is art.
this is, I will do my Scorsese. This is, this is cinema. This is cinema. Marvel, that's not cinema. This is cinema.
Sounds like Woody Allen.
I know, I can't do Scorsese. Scorsese then turns into.
He's not neurotic enough to be Woody Allen.
Yeah, true.
I think you see enough interviews with Scorsese, he could be a bit of a nut.
He's definitely fast talking, but Matt, what were you gonna say?
Cinema.
Theme parks. No, I think that okay, so I guess maybe I wasn't paying attention too much to kind of like shots and like direction choices, except for the last shot, which I thought was
Oh
really,
yeah.
really cool, where you see kind of like that ruined, like that half ruined temple, which I don't even know where they found that, but that's awesome. I don't know if they
Mhm.
made it or they found it, but that's awesome. But like you see the guy walking towards slash with the camera and holding the baby, and the rain has stopped, and they're walking towards the camera, and then the camera stops, and the guy continues to walk like off frame. I don't know why, but that was like so smooth. That was like really,
Yeah.
really smooth to me. Like it almost makes me want to like go back to school for like film school stuff, but I don't know. But that was
No,
like
I get
really
that way
cool.
too. Like you're just
That was a good shot.
inspired.
Yeah,
It's so inspiring.
yeah.
I'm trying to see. So apparently Kurosawa only had $140,000 to make this movie.
Wow.
Back in 19 I guess 49. I'm trying to see, let's see, for example. I'm trying to see if this was actually like shot outside. Rashomon has camera shots that were directly into the sun. Kurosawa wanted to use natural light, but it
Oh, it
was
was
too
natural.
what was too weak. They solved the problem by
Oh,
using mirrors to in
that's
the
how.
woods to reflect the. So it was actually out in the woods, but they set up mirrors to
That's
try
why.
to like
That's why it
make
looked
the
like
light
studio
heavier.
lamps.
Yep.
That's why it looked like studio lamps. That actually makes so much sense because it's natural, it's in the woods. But I was like, but the lighting seems like it's in a set. So how did they
Yeah,
pull
Joe, I
that
remember you
off?
brought that up while we were watching it.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
I wasn't
imagine.
even thinking about it till you mentioned it.
Well, I'm not saying I'm like, I mean, there was a time in my life where I wanted to do that for a living where that was one of the big problems. It's like, and that was the problem I had with the movie, not to go on a huge tangent, but the one where Leonardo gets screwed by a bear. That was my problem with that movie is that, yeah, The Remnant is that it was all natural. Oh, we're gonna make a movie with natural lighting. And I was like, well, guess what? With studio cameras, it's gonna look like kaput. You know, I think you gotta get a lamp here and there, get some soft lighting going on in a shot. It just
Well,
it's movies.
I still think The Revenant looks amazing, but
To each his own.
I'm just imagining Kazuo Miyagawa and Kira Kurosawa showing up to like a home goods store and just being like, we need 50 mirrors. And they're just like hanging mirrors in the woods. And
Oh my
like
God.
that. I'm just imagining that after finding out how they used mirrors and everything to this.
That sounds like
oh, go
that's
ahead.
that sounds like a rejected SNL skit. Akira Kurosawa at a home goods store.
I'd watch it. Which special guest host is going to be playing Akira Kurosawa?
And the wife is Kate McKinnon for some reason.
I mean, if this was the 70s, it would be John Belushi would be playing Kurosawa, unfortunately.
Oh my God.
No.
Eh,
But yes, it probably would, but no.
I know.
Awkward.
70s, 2000 sensibilities.
But like this is such a so from a technical standpoint, it's incredible. From a writing perspective, it's incredible. And all these actors are just so committed. And you have two of the greatest Japanese actors of all time in Mifune and Shimura in this film. And Kurosawa I've seen probably like 11 or 12 of his movies at this point. It's just so fascinating watching his films and just how amazing they are from a technical aspect and how he plays with even like established stories. Like we talked about Macbeth in Throne of Blood on this movie club at some point, which feels like yesterday, but also feels like 5 years ago. Because time doesn't exist anymore ever since COVID happened. And I wouldn't complain if we wind up talking about more Kurosawa films on here. You know, I could just keep pulling out all of my Kurosawa films because for some reason to tell them start with S or R, and they're like eye level with me at this point. One that would be really cool is Ron, which is one of his last films. But I promise I'm not going to just keep pulling DVDs and Blu-rays out and just showing them to the camera. This apparently got an honorary Oscar for how much of an achievement it was. I don't know if this was pre there being an international film Oscar, and that's why they did that. Maybe this was one of the reasons why they started doing it, because they were just like, this movie's too incredible. But we sure aren't going to nominate it for Best Picture. We'll bring it in and give it an honorary Oscar. Because I'm pretty sure Kurosawa's films have won multiple international Oscars, international film Oscars, which at that point was a foreign language film category. But does anybody have any other thoughts, comments, ideas, aspects of the film we want to discuss?
See, that's funny because I was thinking about what you mentioned with the Academy. So this movie comes out in 1950. And, you know, we were just talking about Oppenheimer and we were just talking about World War II. And a part of me is wondering if a lot of that has to do with, you know, post World War II sensibilities and, you know, nominating Japanese films. There's at least my understanding. Yeah, there had to be a part where there was a lot of tension or just a lot of mixed feelings in regards to that, you know, probably played a role into that decision. I mean, it's interesting to say that because, like, you know, time is of the times, things change over time. But like being back then in the 50s, it'd be a fly on the wall to wonder, you know, how people felt about Japanese cinema at that time.
That's an interesting point, but you know what? We were already over it. We were fighting North Korea at that point.
That's true.
We moved on to the next one.
That is a good point. That is a good point.
That was more as a joke, but also not a joke.
It's like, oh wait, they got Gigantor and Astro Boy
like
coming
so many
out.
things
Yay.
in history,
but also not a joke.
But also, like, I feel like we had a problem. It's just like, well, we need to be fighting some Asian country at this point. And basically that took up the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s into the 70s. So
Imperialism is fun.
we were fighting communists, Matt. Communists. But not to get too political here for like 1960s politics, American politics. But that is an interesting point. And like, it is fascinating if you put that context in, like how much Japanese cinema was coming over to the States at that point, especially, 5 years removed from the end of World War II when we bombed the shit out of Japan and killed hundreds of thousands of people. So it's like,
like even Godzilla, like I remember how when Godzilla came to the States, it was repackaged so that it was seemed to be an American movie with an American
inserted
lead
an American actor. Yeah.
Yeah, like it was
That was
Godzilla,
crazy.
King of the Monsters, and it completely took out the context, or at least it was like, a random
guess
American
what?
dude.
We're Godzilla.
Oh, we can't make people feel that way,
We're not a giant nuclear monster. Oh, wait a minute.
There was that one time.
Look at the monster's head. It looked like a mushroom cloud, the original one.
Right.
Yeah.
Awkward.
Yeah.
And that
very wonderful design.
That came out in 1954, I'm pretty sure. So that was like
4 years later.
Not even 10 years after World War II ended. It is interesting when you put context like that. Obviously, relationships warmed up with Japan, and Japan's a pretty strong ally of the United States today. And we do get a pretty healthy amount of Japanese cinema that comes through. I feel like probably in 2023, the strongest Asian cinema stream that we get is probably Korean cinema.
Like South Korea, like Bonju.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, let me rephrase that, specifically South Korean cinema only.
Yeah. South Korea.
We're not showing any North Korean cinema here. Not that we would even be able to see it to begin with. But, Parasite won Best Picture 4 years ago, 4.5 years ago at this point. Isn't that crazy?
That is
also
crazy.
Past Lives, wasn't that? Yeah, that was also a Korean film as well, right? The one that came out this year.
That just
also
came out.
Fantastic movie.
Which one?
Past Lives.
It's a romance movie. It's like super quiet, to be honest, in terms of kind of like, it's like a very intimate movie, like a super small cast, but I really liked it. It's random.
There's not enough giant nuclear monsters in it, Matt. I don't know if Americans will care about it.
I'm down for like an intimate Breakfast Club, small bottle episode movie, so I'm down for that. Probably not quite Breakfast Club, but you mentioned small intimate cast. That's the first thing I think of.
Well, no, it's a small intimate film.
Okay.
It does take place over decades. So it's not like in one place the whole time. But anyway, any final thoughts on Rashomon?
Not really, other than I really want to check out more Kurosawa films now.
Well,
I have a whole bunch of them lined up on Max.
Watch Aikairu.
Yeah, there's so many of them on Max, so go watch them. I'm only expecting more Kurosawa films to pop up as nominees moving forward.
I was going to say one final thing. So just going back to really quick about whose story we believe the most. I know I said I don't remember the finer details, but I do remember how I felt watching the movie because of one thing that I can't. I'm pretty sure it's the priest who says this. He has a line that's something like I'm paraphrasing. Like he says something like men are weak. That's why they always tell lies to themselves. So that had me thinking that none of the stories are believable. They're all just embellishing their own story, like just in a way to make themselves look good.
Yeah, I definitely walked away not believing anyone 100%. It definitely accomplished that goal.
Nor should we.
And speaking of, we're talking about like, how this, impacts the life and humanity. I mean, if you really think about it, at the end of the day, kind of like what Vinny's saying is that the purpose of serving yourself and making yourself look better is that sometimes, we look at things from like black and white, good and bad. There are going to be grays, and the reality is sometimes when it comes to being put in a situation where you have to be in a trial and try to represent something so high stakes, you are going to protect or there's going to be self-interest. I
Well,
mean, inevitably.
when it came down to it, that woodcutter could have been arrested
Hmm.
and put on trial for himself for theft.
Yeah, I
I
guess
mean,
they don't state it, but I guess it's to be understood that they believe the wife the most. That's how that trial went.
There you go. See, this movie was anti-man way before Barbie was.
that
And if
Twitter,
you
Twitter,
that's
please get him.
Kenough.
Get him now. Twitter, please get him now.
excuse Matt, what are you talking about? What's Twitter?
Oh
Do you
yeah,
mean
yeah,
X?
yeah.
And the crazy thing about that too, though, is like everybody focus on it's like everyone the main subject with Barbie is that it's like it's anti-man, but I never at the end of the movie I got a sense
It's
that
not. This was
yeah,
everybody watching this. Rashomon's not anti-man. Barbie's not
no,
anti-man.
no,
If
it's
you
not.
think that, please think about it again. And
Rethink
for the
rethink a lot
record,
of
Matt,
things.
I only share my thoughts on Threads. So if Mark Zuckerberg wants to come at me,
I deleted X the moment I saw that on my phone. I said, no, no, no.
I with all these
I
different
didn't sign up for
apps and
that.
these Twitters and these X's and these threads, I can't.
which is why we
Oh,
all should just keep sharing our movie thoughts on Letterboxd, which is the
Yes.
true great social media site for all things movies. And maybe they'll sponsor me someday. So
Oh, that'd be awesome.
shameless plugs all around. And there we go. So we don't know what we're going to be doing next episode yet. So you all will find out when the next episode posts. But maybe it'll be another Kurosawa film. Seems like we're on that path. And, they're almost all of them are hanging out over on Max streaming service, which still sounds wrong. Poor HBO. But anyway, from Vinny, Joe, Kevin, Matt, and Shane. Thank you all for always tuning in and supporting the Development Hell podcast.